Hey everyone, I hope you're well. I hope you've been enjoying this cold winter weather. Hopefully, you've been able to get out, bundle up in scarves and beanies and some gloves. My hands have been getting cold recently, and going for a nice walk, going to the park. Get outside and enjoy some of that weather. This week, for our children's church story share, we are going to be hearing from Ann Hurst again, and she's going to be reading us a story called Mrs. Twiggly's Tree by Dorothy Warren Fox. It's one of her favorites from growing up. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm going to read you Miss Twiggly's Tree by Dorothy Warren Fox, one of my favorites growing up. Funny Miss Twiggly lived in a tree with a dog named Puss and a color TV. She did what she liked and she liked what she did, but when company came, Miss Twiggly hid. It's not that I don't like people, said she, but one gets a bit shy when one lives in a tree. She named her dog Puss. He didn't mind that. My very best friend, he said, is a cat. Old Miss Twiggly was friendly with bears. They shed on the sofa, she said, but who cares? They don't find me odd, and I'm grateful for that. I don't think they'd mind if I slept in my hat. And just to be sure, she slept in her hat. She slept in her hat, but she made up her bed, and she swept and she dusted until the bears said, "We're thoroughly tired of being so neat," and refused when she asked them to hold up their feet. And she's sleeping in her hat. Now Puss was clever, a smart dog indeed. He did the shopping for things they would need, groceries, clothing, and tools for repairs, bones for himself and jam for the bears. But whenever he shopped for Miss Twiggly's meals, the town dogs teased and snapped at his heels. So poor Puss shivered, as scared as could be, as he hurried back home to his safe and sound tree. I'm chasing him. Miss Twiggly and Puss were happy up there, high above ground in a house in the air. Simply disgraceful, said the people in town, to live in a tree and never come down. The wife of the mayor was maddest of all. To not be at home when I come to call is unforgivable, and besides that, I've been told she sleeps in her hat. My husband must know of a town law, said she, against things of that kind going on in a tree. She marched to the mayor. Now what can you do? That house in the tree is spoiling our view. Miss Twiggly's a nuisance, no town should allow a person to hang up her wash on a bough. The smoke from her chimney is causing a smog, and she lives, so they say, with some bears and a dog. The poor mayor sighed. My dear, I agree, but more pressing problems are bothering me. The weather report says it's going to go rain. I fear we are in for a wild hurricane. It did rain for a week and a month and a day. The wind blew a gale and the bridge washed away. The town was cut off, its people afloat. Whatever went by, they used for a boat. The road and the meadow were one stormy sea, and right in the middle stood the house in the tree. Old Miss Twiggly had battened her hatchets and checked her supply of tea and dry matches. String up some hammocks, she called to the bears. Puss, you build platforms for spare beds and chairs. We may have some collars and wet ones at that. I'll go change the bows on my best sleeping hat. I'll get right to work on a big pot of stew. To be sure there'll be plenty to feed quite a few. She put on a kettle and buttered some bread. Now let them all come, I'm ready, she said. They're coming, called Puss, who perched way up high, holding a spyglass close to his eye. Ahoy, called the mayor. Miss Twiggly, yoo-hoo! Is there room in your house for a wet friend or two? There's room for you all, Miss Twiggly replied. Climb up where it's warm, climb up and be dried. They hauled up the mayor and the chief of police and sweet Trudy Wilmot, the groceryman's niece. Pigs came in their trough, and a wet mother cat arrived with her kittens aboard a straw hat. The dogs of the town came swimming right up, big dogs and small dogs, and one frisky pup. But plump Miss Honk was afraid of the stairs, and little Joe Pettibone didn't like bears. Don't fret, Mrs. Honk, Miss Twiggly said. You won't mind the height when you're tucked into bed. And Joe, my big bears are as tame as can be. They don't spill a crumb when I ask them to tea. In the very last boat, bedraggled and wet, was the wife of the mayor, looking upset. She felt so ashamed of the words she had said when her hostess declared, I've fixed you my bed. Miss Twiggly's new friends were cozy and warm, sheltered and fed and out of the storm. Though the wind made the rain go splitterly splat, the mayor's wife slept safe and sound in the hat. There she is. Old Puss, once so shy, forgot all his fear. The town dogs were fun. He was glad they were here. They pretended the house was like Noah's Ark. They played games and sang till long after dark. Now the townsfolk were glad, just as pleased as could be, that funny Miss Twiggly lived in a tree. And Miss Twiggly found out something wonderful too. When emergencies come, you don't think about you. You help all you can and you never ask why. Then the first thing you know, you forget to be shy. The end. Thank you for reading this with me. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you, Anne, for sharing that wonderful story. I had never heard it before, and I really enjoyed it. It had a very Noah's Ark meets the selflessness of Jesus vibe. So, as you were hearing it, I'm curious to hear maybe what you were picking up on. What were some of the takeaways from that story? Maybe chat with your parents about it or with your siblings. What were the things that you liked that Mrs. Twiggly did in that story, or maybe things you didn't like that other characters in the story did? I, for one, did not like the judgment that the mayor's wife had passed on Mrs. Twiggly. She was wearing a hat to bed and she wasn't acting proper, and who lives in a tree? I mean, I, for one, growing up, always wanted to live in a tree. We had a really cool, tall avocado tree in my backyard growing up. And me and my sister spent a lot of time climbing up into that avocado tree and playing make-believe and pretending like we had lived up there. But the mayor's wife was not having it. And so she looked down on Mrs. Twiggly and tried to get her husband and others in on that same judgment. But when we see the flood coming, who helps them but Miss Twiggly? She shows them the kindness that was not shown to her. Her heart and selflessness is so, so big. That's something that really inspired me to think, how have I been judging others or not been selfless to those who maybe weren't so nice to me in the past? How have I not given them a second chance, maybe? So that's something for us to think of this week. And it also reminds me of a story that we read in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 7, when Jesus is getting dinner at a house with some Pharisees, I believe, and a woman comes into the house and she begins kissing Jesus's feet, and I think that they say the tears wash his feet, and she's wiping it with her hair, which sounds really weird, but basically what she's doing is this big, big gesture of love and admiration to Jesus. And when the other people come back into the room, all they can see is this woman that they judge. They're like, oh my gosh, she is poor. She is not well thought of in the community, and all they can see are the judgments that they're passing on her. They can't see the actions that she is embodying right now. And that's what Jesus points out. Jesus says, well, look at how wonderfully kind and welcoming and selfless she has been to me. And you guys may have had me over for dinner, but you didn't offer me a glass of water when I came in. You didn't wash my feet. And it's a way of saying, stop looking at who you think someone is and start looking towards their actions. I think that's really important for us to remember, is in a world where we like to judge so much, and it's a way of making ourselves feel better, usually about ourselves, when in reality, Jesus is asking us to pause when we feel ourselves judging and to maybe look at actions. Maybe someone's told us that someone's maybe not a good friend, or maybe they're mean and we don't even know them, but we start to think that person is mean. And we don't see that maybe they're kind. Maybe that person was lying or is upset about something and is trying to pass on a bad image of this other person. So this week and the weeks and months and years ahead, it's a good practice for our whole lives, is when we meet people, try and get to know them. See what they're doing with their actions. Are they being kind? Are they being selfless? Let's all seek to be like Mrs. Twiggly and offer kindness and food and a bed and a dry space for those who need it when the storms come. Yeah? Let's be selfless. Let's be like Jesus, loving everyone no matter what. Have a good week, and I'll see you next weekend.